My question is, do you think you love yourself?
Hey!
Do I
think I love myself? Hey yo, what's good? What's poppin', brothers and sisters? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Sedumedi, and today I'm not riding solo. I am with
Sedumedi.
Ooh, okay. So yeah. The order of the day is we're practically doing a sit-down video. So this is our first ever sit-down video, or rather we're introducing a new segment calling the Sit-Down with the Sedumedi Sisters. So yeah, that's a segment where we'll be discussing all things life, all things, practically things that pertain to our lives. Basically what we go through on a daily, what we, and like, let me just say life. I don't want to cap it at anything. We're going to be discussing everything and anything. Nothing is off bounds. So until we get like a 10 forward, for now it's just the Sit-Down with the Sedumedi Sisters, where we will be discussing everything and anything. Nothing is off limits. So we are coming practically for everybody.
Hey man. I wouldn't say that.
We are coming for everybody. We are coming to have those uncomfortable conversations. We're coming to discuss things you never thought to be discussed on a platform such as this. King.
Hectic.
No. Is it not? Are we not? Are we here to play?
No, we're not.
Exactly.
Clearly not.
Exactly. We're not here to play. It's 2024, baby, so we gotta get into the program. So yeah. The order of the day, or rather the topic of today's conversation, is self-love. You know, I was having a chat with my girl the other day, and she told me that she wants to have this conversation with me on camera, and I'm like, what a guan? What is what is it that she's like, you know, I have questions to ask you, but I want to ask you on camera. That's a little bit too serious, right? So the conversation is self-love. I didn't prepare anything. She said if she tells me, I will come prepared to this conversation.
Did I say that?
Don't be acting surprised, my dear.
When did I say that?
Don't be acting surprised. She said, yeah, that's exactly what she said.
Okay. I don't remember saying that, but I know I just wanted to have the conversation. I said I'd like to have the conversation with you on camera. And I only have one question, really.
Like, really? We are here for one question. But anyway, what to do? Aguna, like Senani, right? We just here. Let's hear what's your question.
The thing is that the question is a conversation.
Oh,
it's a conversation starter, basically.
Oh, the question is a conversation. Yeah, basically that's why we're here, to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Whatever that conversation is.
Yeah, so when we're making stuff like, I had like a long list of questions now, babe.
Well,
like that.
If it's a conversation starter,
then yeah. But anyway, my question is, do you think you love yourself?
Hey!
Do
I think I love myself? Mm-hmm. You know, I was watching a video yesterday, funny enough, and this lady said, people define self-love with how they take care of themselves outwardly, right? So you basically kind of like look on the outside. But she said something very interesting. She said, you see how someone loves themselves by the decisions they make towards themselves. You see that someone loves themselves by what they choose to tolerate. You see that someone loves themselves by the situations they put themselves in and how long they decide to stay in those situations.
Yeah.
So practically what she was saying, self-love, it's not what we make it out to be. Do I think I love myself? Hey, that is an interesting question. Why ask that question?
Because it's a very interesting question. Like, I'd like to know. It's a question that's been lingering in my head. Like, I've been actually asking myself, do we really love ourselves as individuals? You know?
Were you asking that?
And I think I
Generally?
also got to that point because I was asking myself that do I love myself? Because I've gotten to a point whereby I realize that self-love is not what we make it to be.
What is it? What is self-love? Let's define. Let's start
there. Okay.
What does self-love mean to you? How do you define it?
Okay, that's the question that I had for you.
No, you said okay. I love myself.
It's okay. I think generally, right, people mistaken self-love for self-esteem, as you say.
Okay.
People, when you ask somebody, do you love yourself? They'll say, yeah. Like when I look at myself in the mirror, I've fallen in love with me. I'm happy with the way I look. I'm happy with the person that I am. So therefore, I love myself. But for me, self-love is when you are completely okay with the idea of not being chosen.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people are addicted. We are addicted to being chosen, to being picked, to being wanted. But that, for me, indicates a lack of self-love. So self-love has nothing to do with how you look and how you feel. It has more to do with what we do not see, what is inside, that void within you. Yeah.
That is it. I know where that derives from. Because we've been having conversations about certain people, certain things practically, and we were like, you know, by how this person moves, I don't think this person rather respects themselves, loves themselves, or regards themselves that highly.
Yes, because I remember the other day, we were speaking about a particular individual. And I was like, this person doesn't love themselves. And my mom was like, why do you say that? And I was like, because there's no way you can completely love yourself and you are addicted to being chosen, literally. And I think we should really evaluate what that stems from. How does someone get to that point? Because nobody was born not loving themselves. Nobody was born with a low self-esteem. These are the things that we accumulate as we grow. So for someone to have a low self-esteem is because society has told you somebody who looks like you is not the standard, right? Then therefore it's the same thing with self-love. How does one get to a point whereby they constantly want to be chosen by society or by their environment, whatever? I would like to believe that it stems from rejection. Rejection strips you off a lot, right? It strips you of your self-esteem, your self-worth, how you see yourself, how you value yourself. Then that leads to you going out there seeking for validation to close up that void. So rejection looks different for different people. Some it's being rejected by your parents, your upbringing. It's just trauma. So because we are reacting from that trauma, we are constantly seeking for people to want us, for people to love us, so then we can feel good about ourselves, because that's exactly what rejection stripped us away from, us feeling good about ourselves.
Oh, that's deep. But because you say that, right, I don't think anyone has reached that ultimate level of self-love.
What do you mean?
I don't think there is a person or individual out there who has reached the level of self-love, because no matter where we go, and like like you're saying, we want to be chosen. We may want to be chosen in different facets and aspects of our lives, right? For instance, when you are a student, right, and you want to get into a program, you want to be chosen to be in that program, right? So you not being chosen to get into that program, it's a hint, or rather, your self-esteem takes a knock, right? Because it's that feeling of rejection that pops up, right? It may remind you that you're not good enough for whatever reason. It may remind you that you're not good enough. It may remind you that, for instance, maybe you are rejected because of your marks or whatever. For instance, with me, let's say for instance I apply for a job and I get rejected. I mean, as much as you like to think that you are rejected because you maybe don't meet, like for whatever reason that you may be rejected for, even if you didn't even want the job, you will take a knock, right? I'll make an example with relationships. For instance, you know for a fact you don't like that guy, but if he was to reject you, you would look at yourself in a certain light. You'd be like, hey man, why did that person sort of reject, even if you didn't want that person, even if you've rejected them first, but the fact that they rejected you also, kind of your self-esteem, or your ego rather, takes a knock, right? So with that being said, I think your idea of loving yourself, it doesn't stand alone. Self-love is not a standalone. It's linked to your self-esteem, like you say.
Okay.
It's linked to your confidence, like you say. It's linked to all those other things, because at the end of the day, we may say we don't want to be chosen. We may say you shouldn't want validation from others. You may say all of those sorts of things. Fact remains that in whatever it is that you do, or whoever you want to be, that person still needs to be chosen.
Okay.
You still need to be chosen for the job. You still need to be chosen to be married by your husband or your partner. You still need to be chosen by your kids. You still need to be chosen by your family, like the relationships you build with people. You still need to be chosen by your friends. So the problem, I think, where that will come in, or where the problem starts, would then be when you depend on being chosen. That's where the problem would be, right? You depend on being chosen. That one day when you wake up and you decide, I'm not your sister anymore, or you wake up and you decide, I in fact do not want to have a relationship with you like that anymore. Then now, if that alters my whole self-image, like it kind of, if that alters my whole world, then that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? As people, what we do is we build homes in other people and in other things. And that when that home crumbles, what happens to you? You also crumble with it. Instead of building homes in others, we should actually invest in building homes in ourselves. The validation that we seek in other people is within us. And also, I think more than anything, I think we need to realize that the love that we also seek from others, we can literally get it from God.
Ooh. Fine. That literally, full stop, drop smack, that's it. Nothing comes after that.
Literally, understand? God's love is sufficient to cover every single thing that has told us that we are not good enough. And we should also ask ourselves, when we take a knock from being rejected, why? For me, that's a point of realization. Yeah, you can't maybe go around with that level of self-love, or nobody has reached it, as you're saying. But if you get rejected And I don't want us to look at it on a surface level, because getting rejected from a job, those are like daily.
They happen.
Yeah,
Inevitable.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
And it could happen to anybody and everyone.
Yes.
But there are other sort of rejections that literally leave a stain in you.
Ooh.
They're traumatic and that we carry.
Ooh.
And for example
of those kinds of rejections,
being rejected by your parents or by a parent, right? Or perhaps you are used to being picked.
Ooh.
You are used to being that girl. And you are put in a situation whereby you actually realize
you're no longer that girl.
You're no longer that girl. Or you're not picked just once and then you feel like, I'm no longer that girl.
Yes.
Or that guy.
Ooh.
Just because that one time you were not picked.
Or you are picked. You are not picked all the time.
Yeah.
Like I think when you're not picked that once, that's just your, I don't think that can answer your whole perception, but it's your ego taking a knock there.
Yeah.
Because being picked all the time has built up this sort of ego within you, right? That you always get what you want, things like that, right? But people, if you realize, people who were not picked all the time. So for instance, you were nobody's first option. Not necessarily option, but you are nobody's first pick. You know, you may feel like people were friends with you because, like, as a last resort. You know, if in a world full of options, if people had to pick, if people had an option, they wouldn't have picked you to be their friend. If people had an option, they wouldn't have picked you to be their partner. If people had an option, I think it's especially like when you say it's linked to trauma. So those are rejections that children could feel. Like that could come from you being rejected as a child. You know, if we're just, when we're playing games, you're never that child to be picked first. You know, whether we're playing Gusha, we're playing Diket, or we're playing
I don't know. Matashan.
You know, even those things, you were never that person, Mugusha, whatever game that we were playing as kids, you were never the person who be like, you're always the last to get picked. You know, so it's not necessarily that one incident that blows up your identity or that makes you feel less of yourself, but it's when you look at all of those ideal or all of those situations and you realize, in fact, I was never anybody's first pick. I was never anybody's, you understand? Number one, I was never that person. I was never that person people looked for or looked towards. I was never that person. And that can take, and even in relationships, you know, there are people who were never asked out. There are girls who were never, I don't know, but there are girls who were never asked out. And in that regard, I mean, everybody, like as a girl, every girl gets asked. There's no girl that doesn't get asked out. But you grow up to realize that there are girls who have trauma from not being asked out, because every girl around you is being asked out. Whilst when maybe your problem is nobody you want is asking you out. You know,
Crazy.
No one you want is asking you out, but somebody, you understand. And as somebody who gets asked out a lot, you don't realize, or you don't even think that being asked out is even something
you can cry over.
You can cry over.
Yeah.
You understand? Because
why?
Or you can want. Because why? You've always had it. But now, what do you say to that girl? What do you say? What do you say to that girl?
Okay, I think in those instances, right, the person who hasn't had that privilege would be more. That person they are more in a position of actually loving themselves more, in my own opinion, because only if they are aware of the situation, though, because firstly, before you can actually love yourself, you need to understand what loving yourself is. And that also entails recognizing the fact that you haven't been loving yourself for whatever reason. So if you've been rejected many times, or you haven't been receiving the love that other people around you receive, I think you do recognize it at some point.
You notice.
You do recognize it, and you can either be okay with it and not let that define you, or sulk about it and want it and cry about it. But you are most likely at some point to be tired of not loving yourself just because other people don't love you. Then you get yourself together and you actually start putting in the work, right? And then we have the other party who is used to being liked. That person is more likely to depend on that attention that they receive. I remember there was a time where I had to have a conversation with myself, and because I got used to being wanted, to a point whereby I knew that every room I stepped into, there was somebody who was going to ask me out or have some sort of interest towards me. And I realized that I was starting to expect it to happen. Like, I knew it was going to happen. What happens therefore? You start depending on that to feel good about yourself. Then that's why I'm saying the person who has not been wanted is more prone to loving themselves than the person who is wanted by people. Only if, though, that person does not recognize it, because essentially you need to be able to recognize that, as I'm saying that, because these things are subconscious. You go about your day, you just know, someone's gonna hit on me. Right? But I also had
and
to,
I'm just gonna ignore it.
Exactly.
Because I'm that girl.
I had to be like, no, you shouldn't expect that to happen. If it happens, it's okay. But if you expect it to happen, then you're gonna start then going to a point whereby you do things or you want to look a certain way because
so that it happens. To ensure that it happens.
Because then you're going to feel good about yourself.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So when certain things happen and it takes a huge knock on your ego, it's human. But when something knocks your ego, then how long are you going to feel that way? For how long do you stay in that place of feeling like I'm not good enough? If it's a temporary feeling for a day or two, then it's okay. You know, it happens. But if it's an ongoing feeling, it goes on, and you constantly feel it, and you going back to it, it's like it becomes some sort of trauma. Then that's a clear indication that maybe the situation has taken a knock more on your love for yourself than it did take on your ego.
That's deep. That's deep. It's an indication that it has taken a knock. That is deep. There's a part that you alluded to, but now it kind of slipped my mind. But I hear what you say, right? I hear what you say in the sense of the person who's not picked is in a position to love themselves more. Let me just make an example of myself. I can attest to that, right? For instance, I have been single. I've never been in a relationship.
I'm asking.
How is it? As if she doesn't know. I've never been in a relationship. Like I've dated, but I've never been in a relationship. I've dated people for sure. But I've never been in a relationship.
Yeah.
You understand? So for me, I've always been single. That means I have never depended on anyone to make me feel good about myself.
Yeah.
I don't have anyone who tells me, oh my god, well, I'm lying. Let's say for instance, okay, I was gonna say I've never had anyone tell me I'm beautiful, right? But those like, it's random people there. It's not like one consistent person in your life who tells you, oh my beautiful baby, you look gorgeous today. Oh, it's there's no thing who constantly validates me in that regard.
Yeah.
So what that happens is what happens then? I validate myself. You understand? And even in situations where now I lost my train of thought. But also, as I was saying, what you're saying is right. But only if that person is self-aware. I think one point that we're missing here is that self-love requires a lot of self-awareness.
True.
It requires a lot of self-awareness. Self-love is not perfection.
Yeah.
Self-love is not a destination. Self-love is not something you like. It's not innate. It's not innate. It's not something you are taught. It's something that you learn as you grow, as you become, as you unbecome. As you learn and unlearn certain things.
Yeah.
Self-love is a journey. It's a journey that's constantly evolving, a journey that's never ending, a journey that's, I think, fulfilling as well. To the, like when you're looking at the bigger and broader picture.
Yeah.
So now, what do we say? Okay. So what do we say to the girl who doesn't recognize her power? Number one, the girl that feels worthless, not valued, simply because other people have never shown or expressed that to her. You know what I'm saying? So in a sense of, you said, if that person isn't aware that they can actually validate and love themselves and depend on God for that love, if that person is not aware, for instance, if that person believes that the only way to self-love, to self-worth, to feeling enough is as if there's a tribe of people that make her feel like that.
Yeah.
What do you say to that girl?
I think first thing first is self-awareness, as you say. And more than anything, we need to understand what exactly self-awareness is. I think self-awareness just basically means that being aware or cognizant of your thoughts and feelings and your feelings towards the things that happen around you. Right? And it's quite important to sit and reflect as to why you do the things you do, why you react the way you react to the things people do to you. So when you sit, you should ask yourself, like, why is it important to me that I'm always around people? Why is it important to me that I get complimented? Why am I constantly seeking attention from people in these ways? Even if it's just one person, like why is it important to me that I get attention from this particular individual? When you sit with yourself and you actually ask yourself those uncomfortable questions, you will then actually get the answers. It won't happen like immediately, but it should be a constant thing that happens regularly. It should be a norm for you to actually reflect on your life and your decisions. Right? What you will get or allude to is that perhaps then you have faced some sort of rejection, and I think most of the time we make self-love a concept for women, which is very, very invalid.
You realize when you're in relationships with these men that they do not love themselves.
Yeah, like a lot of people are walking around and they don't actually love themselves. Like we are fooling ourselves and pretending as if we are confident, we are bold, but we don't actually love ourselves.
That's fact.
And because we realize or we recognize that perhaps we don't, then we also run away from actually reflecting on the things that we do.
Here's
and
the
our
thing.
actions.
Here's the thing. That just came to mind as you're speaking now. The reason, going back to the person that we're speaking about, right? The reason you find that most people do not love themselves is because of their actions.
Sure.
It's because of their actions. Sometimes you do things you hate, and that makes you hate yourself internally. And we do things we hate because of different sorts of reasons, right? Maybe you'll be validated in society. For instance, I'm alluding to the question of men not loving themselves, right? For instance, you'd find that you are a man around certain men who need to behave in a certain way to be accepted by these fellow men.
Yeah.
So you need to do certain things to be accepted in this tribe, right?
Yeah.
And maybe some of the things you need to do don't align to your core values. Don't align to who you want to be or who you aspire to be. They don't align to who you are raised to be. But because you need to do these things, because you're seeking validation from these other men, you end up hating yourself. You betray yourself in order to be accepted in society. And so you walk around with wounds of things that you've done that you hate about yourself.
Yeah.
Now you hate the fact that you did what you did. You also hate the fact that you don't have a backbone to stand alone in a world that needs you to be somebody you are not. You also then hate the fact that you depend on other people to validate you.
Yeah. Like it's a very uncomfortable position to be in.
And
that is why funny enough, we still run away from it. Right? Because it requires you to look internally, and most of us don't want to do that.
Most of us don't want to do that.
What you're saying puts us in a position whereby we feel shame.
Yes, guilt.
Yes. And lack of self-respect.
Ooh.
And
this girl is preaching.
Those are all things that really what's the word? They bring up the lack of self-love.
Yes.
They are the result of not choosing yourself.
Wow.
Okay. They are a result of not choosing your beliefs, your principles,
your values,
and betraying yourself, despite the fact that you promised yourself that you'd never allow yourself to be in that position.
I mean, I've been there. I've been through that. I've been in a situation where I betrayed myself. And I betrayed myself by compromising myself. So my betrayal towards myself was compromising, where I told myself I would never compromise. So when I look back, I'll be like, you lied. You are a liar. You said this and you didn't do it.
Yeah.
So now you are a liar. It's telling you to someone you don't want to be now.
Yeah.
You didn't want to be a liar. Sometimes you think, lying to other people, lying to you, lying to whoever. But lying to yourself. And when you discover that you even lied to yourself, that causes even more pain towards you.
Yeah.
You feel less, like those are things that take a knock at your self-esteem, that take a knock at your self-love as well. You feel as though because you did that to yourself. That
do you really love yourself?
Do you really love yourself?
Yeah. Like, do you actually really love yourself if then you can put yourself in a situation that allows another human being to
dictate,
to take
advantage of you, to dictate how you live your life or the decisions that you make? Right? Going back to my point earlier where I said, so you see that somebody loves themselves by the decisions they make towards themselves. For instance, you are in that compromising situation, and the decision you make to choose yourself in that situation will determine whether you love yourself or not.
Yeah, literally. And choosing yourself basically means that you're choosing your values.
Yes.
You're choosing to stand on the ground that you've
built for yourself. So I guess then, how do we help people come to the question, or rather to come to answering the question of whether they love themselves or not? I think the things that we've uncovered, I think you guys will just unravel these things as we unpack them ourselves, right? Linda, it's not something that this conversation was not planned at all, but it's something that we are discovering as we're having this conversation. So I would say, number one, the greatest thing that you can do in this journey of you loving yourself, or journey of discovery, or whatever journey you call it, is self-awareness.
Yeah.
Is self-awareness, right? So you need to be aware of the things you do, the people around you, and how that affects you, how you react to it, and why you do the things that you do,
and why you choose to be around the people that you choose to be around. Why them?
Why you get. The second one is underpinning your values, your belief system, like knowing exactly what those are, knowing what your principles are, knowing what your values are, knowing what you stand on, what you knowing those things, I think will then help you whenever you put in a situation. It will help you know whether this aligns with you or this doesn't align with you, because you know these are my core beliefs, these are my core values, these are my core principles, and these are the things that I'm not willing to compromise on. And if this is where someone does not meet you, either it be relationships, business, either it be work-wise, if this is where these areas of your lives do not meet you, then you are able to detach from those things, right?
Yeah. I think also what people need to understand, that it's just a thought. I don't know what you'll have to say about this. I think more than anything, our principles and our values really determine our identity.
Yeah.
That's where we find who we really are. So therefore, if you have not put up or if you do not know what your principles and values are, you most likely do not know yourself. And therefore you will most likely not love yourself, because you do not know what grounds you. You do not know what's your foundation as an individual.
I mean, okay, so I'll give a tip, right? I'll give a tip, but this tip is for my fellow Christian believers, right? For instance, I don't know, some people don't believe in God, so I don't know what they fall back on, right? In that instance, as an individual, the question, who are you, or what is your identity, that's a very difficult question to answer. So in that regard, when you don't know who you are, when you don't know what your identity is, I think what we fall back on is what God says about us.
Exactly.
You go back to God and you ask him, God, who am I? Who am I in you? Because when you decide to be born again, right? When you decide to be renewed in Christ, you're no longer walking by your own will and might. You're walking in faith with God. And this is a person that tells you, this is who you are, this is what you do, this is what you believe, this is what you should, this is practically what guides you as an individual. and you take that as your compass. So all of that which God says about you makes up who you are, makes up your identity, right? Obviously, you can take into consideration your personality, your wara, but now we're speaking at the essence and the core of who you are here. You understand? Who you are here, right at the core. And then what sets you apart? Obviously, because God says the same thing about all of us, His children.
Yeah.
What will set you apart will then be your personality.
Yeah.
That will be your individuality.
Mm-hmm.
That will set you apart from the rest, which is, your personality and stuff like that.
Mm.
So, if you want to know who you are, ask God, who are you, right? And how you ask God is by reading the Word of God. God has depicted everything in the Bible that will inform you of who you are, where you come from, what God thinks about you, what He sees in you, and things like that. And also,
yeah, I think before you continue, I think the reason why many of us walk around the way we do is because we don't understand the magnitude of God's thoughts about us.
Ooh, there's a scripture that says, "Your thoughts are not my thoughts."
Oof. Oof.
I don't know what scripture that is, but that scripture said, so what God says, what you think of yourself is not what I think of you.
Exactly.
Unless you think like me, it's not what I think of you.
Yeah.
So understand, I think maybe we may have been a little bit too hard in this conversation, but at this moment in time, I want you guys to understand that even if you don't love yourself in this moment, even if you think you're not worthy, even if you think you are undeserving, even if you think all of those ugly things about you, understand your thoughts of yourself are not God's thoughts of you.
Literally. And whether saved or not,
yes,
we will only walk within our power when we recognize the power of God that is within us. And
I told you this girl is preaching.
what He says about us as individuals.
Yeah.
But we'll unpack that in another video.
Yeah, that's a whole conversation for another day.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't remember what I was saying, but I was also watching another video yesterday, right? So this person was asked, I don't remember what they were asked, but they were asked about self-worth, right? Oh, they were asked, how do I increase my level of self-worth?
I think I know that video.
It's on my phone. It's saved on my phone.
No, I know the guy.
You know the guy?
Videos like that where he sits and then somebody behind the camera asks him questions.
Yeah, so I saved this video on my phone. For some reason I was listening to it yesterday. And I'm paraphrasing here, right? So this guy was asked, how do I increase my level of self-worth?
Yeah.
And he said, I'm paraphrasing like I said, right? This is something that stood out for me. He said, I don't remember what he said. But he said something so powerful, right? He said something so powerful, but I'm going to leave you guys with this, right? So it goes also back to the decisions that you make about yourself, right? So here's an interesting one that's never been touched in this conversation. He said, you determine your level of self-worth by who you determine is around you, who has access to you, who you determine is around you at that particular, who or what you feed into your mouth. Do you understand? Like what you feed yourself is linked. He's saying that is linked to how you think of yourself.
Yeah, that is right, because you can only allow what you think you deserve.
You didn't even watch the video, but you are saying what you said. You allow what you think you deserve. Exactly. You also mentioned that point when it comes to partners as well.
Yeah.
You only allow what you think you deserve. Which goes back to, you see how a person loves themselves by the decisions they choose or the decisions they make.
Yeah.
So even what you choose to put on your body, what you choose to eat is linked to your self-love and your self-worth. What you choose to watch All of those things we disregard. What you choose to listen to, like I always say to me, like, it's just a song. And sometimes the song is just a song, guys. But is it
really girl?
You know, I haven't reached to a point where I can unpack that to a level like, I mean, I'm just watching Skim Sam. To me, someone also said your perception makes your reality.
Yeah.
So what you think of that thing will make your reality of it, right? So if I think this has no influence over me, it's just I'm just watching Skim Sam, then that's all it will be. I'm just watching Skim Sam. So if you think of Skim Sam as something deeper than it is, then it will be that. That will be your reality. So if that is your reality, then you shouldn't choose Skim Sam then if it makes you feel a certain way. If your perception of it is not aligned with who you are.
Yeah, definitely.
You understand? So I think we've been going on for too long. I don't know if you want to cut this conversation here.
No, it's okay.
You want to go on?
No.
You want to go on some more. But I think the question still remains. Do you love yourself?
Do I love myself?
Should I answer?
Yes. I asked you first.
I think I'll answer that question.
When?
I'm in love with myself.
Oh, you love yourself?
I'm in love with myself. I've come to accept myself. Oh, here's another point, self-acceptance. Remember I said self-awareness? So that means reflection, that means all of those things. It means understanding your values, and it also means self-acceptance. I think I've come to a point and stage in my life where I've accepted myself. I have accepted myself. I've come to know myself. I've come to understand who I am, and I've come to accept myself. And in me accepting myself, I'm not saying there are things about myself that I do not like. Yes, there are things about myself I do not like. There are things I'm aware that I do that are not aligned with myself. But I acknowledge at this stage and point in my life that there are those things, and those are the things that I need to work towards.
Yeah.
But in essence, do I love myself? I love myself with knowing those things about myself still.
Yeah.
I don't look at myself in the mirror like you're saying, hey. I don't look at myself in the mirror and be like, I hate you for that. You shouldn't have done that. I look at myself in the mirror and be like, my girl, you did that. Why did you do that? Okay, here is why you did that. I understand that you did that. I accept that you did that. And I also accept that does not define who you are.
Yeah.
Or who you've set yourself to be. Right? It doesn't align with you as of right now, but you did it, yes. I forgive myself for doing that.
Yeah.
And going on forward, this is how I will practically eliminate the risk of ever doing that again.
Yeah.
So I think I approach this self-love conversation with grace. Approach this self-love conversation with grace upon yourself. Go easy on yourself, and approach it with self-compassion. If you watched my previous video, I did mention, approach self. Sometimes we speak about compassion and empathy, giving it to other people, but in this instance, as you approach this conversation with yourself, give yourself the empathy you need.
Yeah.
And that will only come with you understanding certain things about yourself, understanding why you do the things that you do, and why you do them the way in which that you do.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So that will help you get to that level of self-love. Like I said, self-love is not perfection. It's not to say you've never done wrong. It's not to say you're a perfect person. It's to say you come to identify that you did the thing that you did, and you've come to accept the thing that you did. You understand them.
It's okay.
And you understand.
Yeah.
And you're not being too hard on yourself to be like, oh, you are evil, oh, you are thinking, you are this. You take accountability, you take responsibility for what you did. That's also self-love. Taking accountability and responsibility for the wrong things that you do, as well as the right things that you do. You do not dwell on the bad. You do not dwell on the negative. I was reading a scripture, I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday. It was speaking about forgiveness. It says, God has forgiven you and all that you did. He has written off the things that you did. And he never thinks of them ever again.
Sure.
Do you understand how powerful that is?
Mm.
It says, you must understand, in the book of life, when you choose to accept God and repent from your old ways and walk with God in your new life, God has no recollection of the things you did in the past. With God, when you say, God, this is what I did, I repent from it, please forgive me, He says, my son or my child, your sins have been forgiven. And this is where you and I start afresh. This is where I start to walk with you on a clean slate. This is where you have, this is where you've become practically, all it means, you have been born again. It's a completely new creation. So God has no recollection of that, but we are human, right? You will have recollection of the things that you did in the past. You'll have, they will pop up here now and then, but understand they do not form part of your identity. They do not define who you are. It's what you did, it's not who you are. Sometimes, I usually say a liar is a liar. That's how I define people. I say because you lied, you are a liar. That makes you a liar. Because you cheated, that makes you a cheater. So that's necessarily how I define people. But that's not God. That's not how God defines people.
Yeah.
God says you're not a liar. You lied. God says you're not a cheater. You cheated. You understand? So learn to separate the things you did from who you are. Now, for me, that helps me kind of know who I deassociate, who I don't necessarily engage with, because that's certain vibes and certain energies I do not need in my life. So that's how I separate certain people from me. Because you did that, that makes you that, and I don't want to be in. So all I'm saying is people will reject you like that. People will disregard you like that. I'm people, right? But God isn't like that. So I think how I'll close this thing is if you run to God, man.
Yeah.
Let me not just say any more thing. In closing, just run to God to be the only person that gets to define you. Run to God to be the only person that gets to ridicule you. Run to God to be the only person that has a say over your life. And let no other man have a say over your life. Like you say, you build homes in other people, build a home in God.
Yeah.
For He is the one person that will never leave you, nor forsake you. You get what I'm saying? So I think we have sort of redirected this whole conversation to how you can tie it to your own self-love, to your own self-understanding, to your own identity as an individual. So yeah, without speaking anymore, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, my girl. From me, that is it, guys, because I speak too much.
I think that's just about it, more than anything. But if somebody, I feel like if somebody can recognize that they need to do some work, as you've been saying, I think it's quite important to then allow God in. You will be surprised as to what God can do with your damage. Your pain.
Damaged but not destroyed.
Exactly. So it's quite important to not do it yourself. It's way harder.
Yeah.
And when you do it by yourself, you will constantly look back and feel even not worthy, not valuable, But when you depend on God to help you, then you will define yourself the way He sees you, and then that will allow you to be who God has ordained you to be. Yeah, that's just about it.
Okay, so answer the question. I even forgot. I was gonna close this video without you answering the question.
Yeah, this video is so long.
Do you love yourself, my sister?
Yes, I do. But the reason why I felt the need to is because I think there was a point whereby I felt like I didn't.
Ooh, what made you think that?
It's because I was being self-aware, I guess. I was looking back as to why I did certain things, why I allowed certain people in my life.
Ooh.
And more than anything, it's like, even after you recognize that you don't actually like this particular individual, you don't like who they are, but you still allow them to stay in your life.
Ish.
And I was asking myself, why did I do that? And then obviously the bottom answer, or the main answer, was that actually, babe,
It's because you don't love you.
you don't love you.
Oh.
Because if you actually did, you wouldn't have allowed
Ish.
you wouldn't have allowed the person to stay, even after you recognize that you don't like who they are.
That's a bit harsh.
Yeah.
That's harsh. But I think I've also been there. But I also think what did I want to say? No, there's something that I wanted to say. I want to say that sometimes, right? Sometimes you may think that, why did you allow certain people in your life? Sometimes it's because people can pretend. You understand? Sometimes it's because you genuinely and honestly did not have an idea of who this person was. And that's when you let them into your life. And then now you have been tied to them, and now things have been revolved, and now it's even harder to break away from them, right? You understand? So understand that concept as well, and go a little bit easier on yourself in that regard. Once you understand that actually, this person, this is not how they first presented themselves, and that's why I let them in. And as you unravel certain things about them, and then you become like, actually, I don't really like this person. Actually, I don't really like this about this person. Also, understand, do you not really like the person, or do you not really like certain things about the person?
Yeah.
You understand? So differentiate between those things. But in the great words of Maya Angelou, when people show you who you are, believe them.
Yeah, because it is also your responsibility when you then actually find out that this person is really this, not that, to walk away. Either you walk away, or you try and believe that they are what they had presented themselves to be.
Ooh! So in that moment, like you were saying, the decision not to let go of the person determined whether or not you loved yourself or not. And so you came to the answer of, actually, I didn't. You didn't. That's deep, man. That's deep.
But anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this first episode. We didn't think it was going to be this long, but it was definitely a mouthful. And we hope that you will receive it with grace, and you will like everything that was said in this.
Even if you don't, that's okay.
It's fine. Yeah. And we will definitely be having more of these, at least once a month. So hopefully you guys will tune in for more.
Yeah. So do let us know in the comments which part of the conversations you liked, which parts you didn't like, what you resonated with, what you don't agree with. If you have more tips on how people can practice self-love, like in this video you would have learned self-love. We focused on the intrinsic part of self-love and not necessarily the extrinsic part. Maybe sometime we'll look at the extrinsic part of self-love, but for today's video the focus was on the intrinsic part of self-love. But we hope you guys enjoyed listening to this conversation. If you did, please give us a thumbs up, share it with a friend or two, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, for we will definitely bring you guys more conversations like these. From me, Sedumedi,
and Sedumedi,
it's goodbye.